Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine, you've been caring for a plant for months, maybe even years,
Right.
and you think you've got it completely figured out. But then suddenly you realize you've fundamentally misunderstood its very nature.
Like a complete paradigm shift.
Exactly. And that's exactly the mission of today's deep dive. We are looking at a highly specific, honestly fascinating botanical aha moment regarding the variegated Mexican mint.
Also known as Plectranthus amboinicus, specifically the Variegatus variety.
Right. And our source material today is incredibly unique. It's literally a single journal entry officially titled Notes on Gardening, Part 848.
It's a fantastic text, and for our purposes today, we're going to be focusing strictly on the biology, the physics, and the cultivation strategies detailed in that log.
Because it's really a masterclass in critical observation, isn't it?
Absolutely. It shows how rethinking our basic assumptions can entirely change how we approach a problem.
So as you listen to this, I want you to keep your own projects or hobbies in mind. Because while we're talking about a plant, this deep dive is really about the art of iteration and diagnosis.
It's about how we look at systems.
Yeah. So let's set the scene. We begin at the exact moment of discovery from the source material. The author is looking at a large cluster of this variegated Mexican mint at the front of a shop.
Right.
And the visual cue here, the thing that sparks the whole realization, is that the stems have literally spiraled down from the pot. They're just sprawling.
Which, in standard gardening, immediately sets off alarm bells.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the immediate assumption most people make is that if a plant is falling over, it must be failing, right? Like it's leggy from a lack of sunlight.
That's the default diagnosis. We assume structural failure.
It's like assuming a person who sits down is just completely exhausted without considering that maybe they're just, designed to be seated for their job.
That's a great analogy, because we project this idealized upright geometry onto the plant. But the source material synthesizes the data perfectly here. It notes that this specific mint only requires bright indirect light, or maybe just a few hours of morning sun.
Which it was already getting at the front of the shop.
Exactly. Because those lighting needs were already being met, we can definitively rule out a lack of sunlight as the problem.
So light starvation is totally off the table.
Therefore, the plant isn't failing, it's actually revealing its true nature. It's a creeper.
A creeper. Okay, so if we've ruled out a lack of light as the cause for it falling over, we have to look at the physical forces at play.
Right, the biomechanics.
Yeah, like why exactly does it sprawl?
Well, what's fascinating here is how the plant's biological success directly causes its physical posture.
Wait, its success causes it to fall over?
Yes, because this plant is a succulent, which means it stores water very efficiently in its leaves and stems.
Oh, I see.
So as the plant grows and gets healthier, those succulent leaves get heavy with water, and gravity just naturally becomes the main culprit.
It's literally just getting too heavy to stand up.
Exactly. The gravity naturally pulls those waterlogged stems over, forcing it to sprawl sideways. That very efficiency in storing water creates the weight that forces it to creep.
But, okay, here's where it gets really interesting. If the leaves are getting heavy with water and just sort of falling over, couldn't a novice gardener easily mistake this for overwatering? Like a root rot situation?
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge diagnostic trap.
Because it looks like it's collapsing, right?
It does. But the source clarifies this beautifully. In a rot scenario, the stems turn to mush because the cells are dying. But here, the plant is completely turgid.
Turgid meaning like firm.
Right, firm and full of water. It's not a watering error at all. It's just the natural, healthy state of the plant's succulent leaves interacting with gravity.
Wow. Okay, so now that we understand the physics of it, we arrive at the ultimate diagnostic test.
The visual proof.
Yeah. How can you, the listener, actually tell the difference between a plant that is starving for light and one that is just, heavy and creeping?
This raises an important question about how we diagnose botanical issues in general.
Because they look so similar at a glance.
They do. But the source provides a brilliant, simple metric. You don't need any special tools. You just look at the gap between the leaves.
The internodal spacing.
Exactly. It's about true etiolation versus creeping.
And etiolation that's the stretching, right?
Yes. Etiolation is the stretching of a plant that is desperately seeking light. When a plant is doing that, the gap between the leaves becomes unusually large. It's stretching its stem out as fast as it can.
Leaving all this empty space.
Right. But if the leaf gaps are normal and tight, like they're closely clustered together, but the plant is still horizontal...
Then it's just creeping.
Exactly.
It's healthy.
So if you're looking at your own houseplants right now, Think of medialation like someone stretching their neck to see over a tall fence.
Right, everything gets elongated and awkward.
Yeah, but creeping is just someone comfortably lying down to take a nap. The structure is totally normal. It's just, well, horizontal. That's spot on. The internal structure hasn't panicked.
Okay, so armed with the correct diagnosis, we know it's a creeper, not a stretcher. The logical next step is action.
We have to change the environment.
Right, we have to change how we accommodate the plant, rather than forcing the plant to change. So what does the source suggest we do?
It dictates a complete shift in our gardening strategy. Specifically, we have to stop using standard round pots.
Which is crazy because that's like the default for everything.
It is, but for a creeping plant, a round pot is terrible. The source says we need to switch to rectangular pots or just grow it directly as ground cover.
Giving it room to move.
Exactly. The text explicitly compares this approach to growing portulaca, which is another type of succulent that loves to sprawl.
So what does this all mean for us? I mean, it really highlights the limitation of the standard round pot, doesn't it?
It really does.
We arbitrarily force nature into our preferred geometries. We want a neat little vertical plant on our desk, so we trap it in a cylinder.
And then we're surprised when it spills over the edge.
Right. We create problems that wouldn't even exist in the wild.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see that treating the variegated Mexican mint like portulaca means giving it a runway instead of a pedestal.
A runway instead of a pedestal. I love that.
It's a profound shift. Knowledge is really most valuable when it's applied to change our system.
Rather than trying to force the subject to change its inherent nature.
Precisely. Don't fight the mass of the plant. Change the container.
Which brings us to a really incredible point about the source material itself. How do we even arrive at these tiny, profound micro-discoveries?
Like noticing the gap between the leaves.
Yeah. I mean, it comes down to the sheer volume and context of the source we're pulling from today.
The iterative observation.
Exactly. I mentioned earlier that this is titled Notes on Gardening, Part 848.
848. It's staggering.
It is. And it's surrounded by an index of thousands of other meticulous logs. This database spans from 2011 all the way to 2026, and it's categorized by month and year, covering completely unrelated topics, everything from Haskell programming to fish keeping to dieting.
Which is exactly what true learning looks like.
It's not a random Google search.
No, not at all. It's the 848th recorded observation in just one specific category of a massive 15-year-long database.
It really puts it in perspective.
It does, because to even notice the gap between the leaves, you need a baseline. You need hundreds of prior observations to know what normal even looks like for that plant.
Right. You can't spot an anomaly if you don't know the standard behavior.
Exactly. It's about relentless, iterative observation over time. That's how you build a diagnostic framework you can actually trust.
Wow. Okay, so bringing this all together, I want to challenge you, the listener, to think about your own workspaces, your hobbies, or even your daily routines. Are you fighting against the natural gravity of your situation?
Are you forcing a creeper into a vertical pot?
Exactly. Have you misdiagnosed a natural creeping tendency as a failure just because you put it in the wrong metaphorical round pot?
It happens all the time in systems design and in life. We see horizontal expansion and we call it stagnation just because it's not going up.
Yeah. We expect everything to be a vertical tower.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. If a plant's perceived failure, literally falling over, is actually just its natural evolutionary method of claiming more territory, what perceived flaws or quirks in your own habits are actually just adaptations, looking for the right environment to thrive?
Oh, that is a fantastic question to leave off on. You know, you might not be failing at all. You might just need a runway instead of a pedestal.